A good debt is financing assets that lead to income greater than the interest accrued on that debt. So, like I said, startup funds for business, buying assets like real estate, or you need a place to live. So you're buying into a home that's building you equity. You're buying a car, which allows you to drive to work, or you're buying education that allows you to increase your long-term income. Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Shaun Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. Today, it's just me and you again. Here we are continuing in our basics discussion. Last time we talked about the importance of having an emergency fund and the correct insurance, building up to that, small emergency fund of a month of expenses and then 3 to 6 months of expenses, and then making sure you have the right insurance to cover you in case something goes wrong. This, basics discussion is going to be about debt, because when you have debt, that is really weighing you down. It's that ball and chain that's just pulling you back as you try and take a step forward. And if you are trying to build up an emergency fund, you're going to need to have more money on hand if you have debt than if you don't have debt. So to make your emergency fund easier and to make your life easier, we're going to talk about debt. Specifically, just breaking down debt. Not necessarily all the things to get out of debt yet, but understanding what debt is. So the first question is debt a fact of life? Is it something that we just have to live with? I mean, people have $1 million homes, $100,000 student loans, and $50,000 credit card debts. They have perpetual car loans in which they will, as soon as they've paid down one, just turn it in and get a new one. And financing is available on everything. Trust me, you can get financing for some pretty dumb things. On Amazon these days, you can finance every purchase if you have an Amazon card for months on end. This does not have to be the way it is. It does not have to be a fact of life, and this needs to change. Debt is a drag on your financial success. Just because debt in general is a drag doesn't mean that debt is bad. Debt is a tool, okay? Just like a hammer is a tool, okay? A hammer isn't bad or good. It's just a hammer, okay? Debt is a tool that can be used well or poorly. You can use a hammer to hammer in a nail or to hammer your finger. Ask me how I know. I'm much better at the hammering the finger. But if you are using debt as a tool, there's only certain things you need to use it on. You wouldn't use a hammer when you are trying to, do something to a window. You could break the window. Or you won't use a hammer to smooth a vase. You'd break the vase. Whatever it is you're trying to use the right tools for, you need to use the right tool for that. Hammer is not the best tool for everything. Debt is not the best tool for everything. So in my opinion, this is, the gospel according to Shaun, there are only 3 reasons why you need to have debt. Number 1, to buy an affordable home. An affordable home. The adjective affordable right there is very, very important, because you can get debt on a home that is way too expensive for your personal income. Your income should not be, so your income to mortgage ratio should not be higher than 25% of your income is going towards your mortgage. They will approve you, saying you qualify for much, much more than that. On my first mortgage, I was paying a full 50% of my take-home pay to my mortgage. It's not a good way to live. It was stressful, and I was going to fall into debt unless I had a side hustle to increase my income. there's no way to live on that much money. So an affordable home. If you can't buy a home in your area, so you might want to consider finding another area to live, because that's the only way areas like that are going to have more affordable homes if people decide that they're not going to just take it. Another reason to have some debt is to get a reasonable education. Now, what does reasonable mean? Well, being educated is an end unto itself, but being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to have a job that's not going to pay you the returns on that is not a good choice. We understand this as teachers, that if you can get into teaching with a ton of debt, then you are stuck teaching until you get that loan forgiveness or not. So, or you're stuck paying it off on a job that doesn't have the money for it, right? So it's a problem. Getting a master's degree could be a reasonable education because it pays you back, but don't get a master's degree from an Ivy League school. Don't get a master's degree from some, super expensive place. If you don't have a scholarship, find the cheapest option. Community college of some kind, not community colleges, those usually don't get master's degrees, but like a local small state college or an online college are all affordable options for education. And if you need to pull out debt to do that, then you can. I would recommend working during the summers to build up money to then put that towards a master's degree, so that way you don't have the debt. But if the increase in your pay can cover the debt cost getting a master's degree, then it could be worth it. And then the third is reliable transportation. You need to be able to make it to work. If you can't, then that's the problem. So if you need debt to get reliable transportation to make it to work, that's allowed. But that is a tool to get the vehicle, to pay down the vehicle, and then not have debt anymore. It is not what's the highest payment I can afford on a car, and then we'll just keep recycling it to the newest and greatest and nicest car that I can possibly afford. That's not reliable transportation. That is luxurious transportation. There's a difference. And that's it. Those are the only three things that I would ever recommend that you use debt for in your personal life. Now, there's other forms of good debt, such as like buying a business. You need debt most likely to buy a business if you're going to do that, or purchasing other forms of real estate that pay you back more than your debt. But I'm talking to the teacher here who's not buying a business, who's not buying real estate, just your personal debts. There's only three reasons to get debt. Any other consumer debt is just bad debt. So there's good debts and bad debts. Once again, debt is the tool, but how you use the tool can either be good for your financial situation or bad for your financial situation. Bad debts are things like financing things you don't need right now. Instant gratification, using debt for instant gratification. So again, a new TV, a nicer car, a bigger house, a kitchen upgrade, a new sofa, etc. Those are all bad debts because they don't give you a return in any way, or they don't cover a basic need. A good debt is financing assets that lead to income greater than the interest accrued on that debt. So, like I said, startup funds for business, buying assets like real estate, or you need a place to live. So you're buying into a home that's building you equity. You're buying a car, which allows you to drive to work, or you're buying education that allows you to increase your long-term income. See how those are all things that will be paying you back over the course of the debt, and not something that's going to just drag you down. Good debts can become bad debts if you don't do it right, though. So, and I'm going to talk about this in depth later, but I bought real estate. I thought it was a great choice. I did some due diligence, but I missed one key thing that turned something from a good debt into a nightmare. Okay. And if you don't just, double check everything, dot your I's, cross your T's, you can lose money really badly on some of these good debts. So don't just think, oh, I'm buying real estate, it's automatically a good debt. Or I'm buying a business, it's automatically a good debt. Or I'm buying a new home, it's automatically a good debt. No. It has to be something that will actually give you a good return on that investment. You need reliable income to back up good debts as well. So just because you can afford the debt with, the income from the real estate doesn't mean that you can have no income to back it up just in case. Now, the more real estate you own with more income coming in, then that becomes less important. But initially, you need dependable income, right? Same thing with buying a home, buying a car, and then the education. You need to have reliable income at the end of that education, and not just I got a degree, so you you have to pay me now. That's not how the real world works. So if you are going to get a master's degree, ask yourself how it's going to benefit you. Some states you get thousands of dollars more per year. Others you get like a $500 stipend. Okay, is it really worth it? I don't know. It's up to you to decide over the course of your career how worth it is. Generally, the earlier you do it in your career, the more worth it it's going to be. Could you do me a favor? I would really appreciate it if you just told a teacher friend of yours to listen to the Teacher Money Show. It'd really help us out, and it'd really help them out too. Okay, chances are you're in debt. That's because if you are an average American or probably an average citizen of the world these days, that's just kind of what's happened. Okay. But remember, you're not alone. But that's not an excuse to stay in debt. Just because your neighbor's in debt and your friend is in debt and your cousin is in debt doesn't mean that you have to be. So the first step is to do a debt inventory. This is going to get you out of debt because you're going to know what your debts are. Second step is to get motivated. You need to motivate yourself to do it and not just be like, oh, I need to pay down debt. Ooh, you don't want to do that, right? You need to be motivated to do it. And then you need to identify what gets you into debt so that way you can stop doing those things. Now, a debt inventory is a list of debts, and I have prepared a debt inventory for you to use. You can go to teachermoneyshow.com/debt inventory, which is DEBTINVENTORY. teachermoneyshow.com/debt inventory to get the debt inventory. You basically list out the debts, you list out how much you owe, your monthly payment, minimum monthly payment, and the interest rate. And you can then, arrange those by, what you need to pay off first. There are multiple methods that we'll talk about later, but doing the debt inventory, first of all, just lets you see what your debts are. And it's going to be a little shocking, most likely. People who think, oh, I'm doing fine, do a debt inventory and realize they have a ton of debts they weren't even thinking about as being debts. So that's the first step. Knowing where you are is the first step towards getting out of it. The second thing is to get motivated. You need to get motivated to pay off your debts because debt payoff is boring, right? It's not saving towards a vacation or even investing towards a great retirement. It is just slogging through a previous, most likely poor decision to get out of debt. So you need something to stay motivated. Easy ways to get motivated are totaling up the minimum monthly payments for your debt. Okay, you can do that. And you can be like, okay, this is how much I owe every single month. Then dream about what you could spend that money on if you were debt free. Take a moment. Pause right now if you have to. Dream. What would you spend your money on if you were debt free? If you weren't paying $25 to that credit card, $75 to that credit card, $150 to this other loan, $360 to the car, and $1,500 to the house, and all these other things that you have debts on. If you were debt free, what would you spend that money on instead? That can be your motivation. There are other ways to motivate yourself, giving yourself little wins, giving yourself prizes for making it. As long as those prizes don't get you deeper into debt, those things can motivate you to keep going. And then you need to identify what gets you into debt. Because if you know what's getting you into debt, you can avoid those things. Kind of like a smoker can avoid smoking if they know what their trigger is for smoking. And yes, debt is an addiction. So knowing these things, there's a little commonality between all of us. Either you are getting into debt because you are doing thoughtless overspending. Okay, you just don't realize you're out of money, so you keep spending it. So tracking your spending can cure that. Spending money ignorantly. So if you just go and purchase something because it's available instead of weighing all your options or considering whether or not you need it, things like that, that's spending money ignorantly. And then keeping up with the Joneses. I think that this is actually an advantage for teachers because people expect us to be kind of poor, which, that's the whole point of this, is not to be poor. But if people don't expect you to act rich, then there's less Joneses to keep up with, because like, oh, that's the teacher. They don't have to have the fancy car. They don't have to have the big house. So that's an advantage, but we still fall prey to it. Right? Maybe the Joneses is the teacher in the next room who's got the amazing wallpaper and the lights hanging everywhere, and so on and so forth. I was in a school where one person got these fancy LED lights that went around their board, and suddenly every teacher in the school bought LED lights. I'm not sure why. And there might have been a good reason for it, but you're spending your money on these LED lights that don't really impact your classroom. They don't help outcomes for your students, and you're spending your money on it. You're keeping up with the Joneses, the Mrs. Jones in the next classroom. So avoid that if you can. But remember, regardless of the reason you get into debt, it's human nature to get into debt. We want things now. We all have that little Veruca Salt, right? You remember Veruca Salt? I want the world. I want the whole world. Right? That's Veruca Salt. I want it now. That is her thing. If you haven't seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the old one with Gene Wilder, highly recommend it. Go back and watch it. But she's just, wants everything. She wants it now. And that's something that we all have inside of us that we need to suppress. We need to say, no, I will have it later when I'm ready. And often when later arrives, we find out we don't want it anyway. So that's something to just keep in mind. We can make conscious decisions to spend less. But if we don't make a conscious decision, our natural unconscious default is to spend more. So something I would recommend is look through your last month of spending. You've been tracking spending now. What surprised you? What's something you're like, why did I spend money on that? What? Right? That's going to be some things that you could look for to help you in your understanding of your debt and what's getting you into debt. Okay, so that's just breaking down debt. Like I said, we're going to talk about getting out of debt later, but here's a review. Debt has become a fact for many, but it doesn't have to be one for you. You can get into debt for an affordable home, right? Affordable, something that you can cover on your income, reasonable education that will pay more later, and reliable transportation, something that will get you to and from work, not luxury, but reliable. And then good debts are things that make you more money, or at least don't get you deeper into debt. Like a home, you buy down equity for getting that home debt instead of just renting for perpetuity. Not that renting is always worse than buying, but that's just why that's a good debt. And then if you have a bad debt, it's going to cost you more money. It's just not going to save you anything in the end. So if you could be satisfied in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath rental, but instead you get a 6-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood, the amount that you're spending extra on that isn't worth it. So the rental might be a better choice in that case. Good debts and bad debts, there's a continuum. It's not a hard and fast line. You just need to remember to stay as far onto the good debt side as you can. And then start your debt journey right. So before we get out of debt, but to start it right, you need to make a debt inventory. You can go to teachyourmoneyshow.com/debt inventory to get that. Or if you want to get the link the easy way, you can also go to teachyourmoneyshow.com/podcast, where I have all the show notes for this show. So if you go to the show notes for this or any show, you can find the links from that show at teachyourmoneyshow.com/podcast. For this show, I'll have a link to the debt inventory. So that's a very important first step. Highly recommend you get that resource just so you don't have to think about it. It's a fillable PDF, so you don't even have to print it off or write it on a piece of paper. It's a fantastic resource. The next thing you need to do is get motivated. Why do you want to pay off debt? It's not just, oh, it'd be nice to be out of debt, but like, this is what I'll do when I'm out of debt. That'll motivate you. And then identify what gets you into debt. Using that debt inventory, you can be like, okay, I'm getting more into debt on this thing. So what's leading me there? That's something you could look into. And then looking at your previous month's tracking of your spending, you can ask, what surprises me? What am I doing here that's like, why did I do that? That's where you're getting into debt. Doing these things will help you on your debt journey. So, invitation, do a debt inventory. Like, seriously, do it. Don't just say, oh yeah, I'll do it. No. You have to pause right now. Go do it. And look at last month's spending and discuss your debts with your partner or with an accountability friend. And remember, you can get out of debt. So do the things you need to do to get there. And as always, you are already rich as a teacher. Your wallet just needs to catch up.
If you'd like to come on the podcast for coaching, to share an expert opinion, or just to talk about a topic you think is relevant, I'd love to talk to you. Just fill out the form at teachermoneyshow.com/guest. I look forward to talking with you.